three more fractions here. Remember to upload all your work at the end to Seesaw. So first of all, our do now. Again, it's going to be a reasoning one, so you need to upload your work to Seesaw. Once you see the do now on screen, I recommend you pause for a couple of minutes to complete it. So here is our do now. Brilliant, looking forward to seeing those answers on Seesaw. So today we are going to be looking at counting in fractions. So we're going to be counting up and down using fractions. So we need to know the parts of the fraction. So identifying the top, numerator, and the bottom, which is the denominator. So you're going to be looking at the numerator, counting up in the numerator. And then you're going to be looking at placing the fractions on a number line. So let's have a look at some of our keywords for today. Remember, my turn, your turn. Fraction, numerator, denominator, number line. Excellent. We are going to be, first of all, looking at fractions with the same denominator, So I want you to have a look at this on your screen now. This is a representation of quarters using cubes. Here we have our whole, which can represent with the number 1, or we can say 4 parts of 4. 4 parts of 4 is the same as a whole. Here we have 2 cubes. 2 cubes represents 2 cubes out of the 4 cubes. 2 quarters. 1 cube represents 1 cube out of the whole, a quarter. And these cubes, 3 cubes, represent 3 cubes out of the whole, 3 quarters. So, as you can see here, with looking at the same denominator, the only thing we actually need to look at is the numerator, because here we all know that the whole is always going to be 4. The whole is always going to be 4. Therefore, the only number which is going to change is our numerator, and this is going to be, because we're looking at from smallest to largest, this means we need to then put them in order from smallest to largest. So we start off by looking what is the smallest numerator here. That is easy for us because we just kind of use our number sense of going 1, 2, 3, 4. So the smallest numerator here, and we can see with the also looking at the visual representation, quarter is the smallest. So I'm just going to write a quarter here. Then the next smallest, what is the next smallest, or what is larger? What is the next larger, apologies, the larger fraction is going to be 2 parts of 4. So I'm looking at my numerator changing. And next, 3 parts of 4, looking at that numerator increasing. And then finally, we have 4 parts of 4, which we would call the whole. And you can see there, all we've done is put the numerator in ascending order. Remember, ascending is when the number is increasing. Descending is when the number is getting smaller. Okay, so let's look at another example. So remember, comparing fractions with the same denominator, just look at that numerator. You don't need to look anywhere else. So here we have 3 representations of fractions. They are all divided into 8 equal parts. I know this because I'm looking at my denominator, the bottom number, but for this comparison, I am going to just look at my numerator. So I'm going to be comparing them in a descending fashion, which means I want them smaller. So I'm going to be starting with the largest first. So what is the largest fraction here? I'm going to be looking at the fraction which has the largest numerator. I've also got the pictures to help me so I can look at the picture with the most parts shaded. So looking at this, I can see that 7 5/8 is the largest number. 7 is my largest number as my numerator, and I can see it's got the most parts shaded here. So let's look at this. So we'd write 7/8. Then our next smallest. Well, I know that 5 is smaller than 7, but is larger than 2. So my next number would be, next fraction would be 5/8. And then I would look at what is my smallest, which is 2/8. And I can see that because it's only 2 parts shaded versus the 5 or the 7th. So that would be those ordering. So let's have a look at placing these fractions onto a number line. So I have here a number line which has got 2 fractions marked on it. It's got 2 quarters and 4 quarters, which we know is the same as the whole. So I need to remember, just looking at the numerator, because our denominator is exactly the same and we're increasing, so I need to start with the smallest of my numerators first. So which number is smaller, 1 or 3? I know 1 is, so I'm going to move it there. And then I know I've got 1 quarter, 2 quarters. I'm increasing my numerator by 1 each time. And then I've got 3 quarters, 4 quarters, which is a whole. That makes sense. But we can also look at with some other fractions as well. So remember, your key step to success is always looking at that numerator, So you can see on the screen now, we have 2 number lines and they are split up into tenths and into quarters, but they're a little bit different. So let's have a quick look at them in a bit more detail. So here we have a number line which is divided into tenths, and I can see I've got 5/10 in the middle here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to count on in ones from 0 to 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Each one of these gaps represents a tenth. So just like when we did the number patterns before Christmas, so each one of those represents a tenth. So this would be 1/10, 2/10, 3/10, 4/10. Carrying on counting up from 5. 6/10, 7/10, 8/10, 9/10. So this is completed a number line from 0 to 1 with each gap being a tenth. Now let's have a look at this bottom one. So each of these lines represents a quarter. So each gap here, I'm going to be counting up a quarter. Again, our numerator is going to be increasing by 1. 2 quarters. 3 quarters. When I add here, I get to 4 quarters, and we know that 4 quarters is a whole. And when we increase the whole, we add another fraction. It's called a mixed number. We don't need to worry about those at the moment, but what it's going to do, it will, instead of adding another number onto our numerator, we have our whole, we've got a whole and a quarter. And then we just carry on adding numbers to the numerator here. So we've got 1 and 1 quarter, 1 and 2 quarters, 1 and 3 quarters. And those are how you number lines. You just always got to make sure you know what the gap is there. What about different denominators? Remember our rule when we're looking at comparing unit fractions with different denominators. Remember, unit fractions, 1 is always going to be our numerator. Remember, unit fractions, the larger the denominator, the smaller the part of the whole. So even though the number may seem like a larger number, when it's a unit fraction, that means it's actually going to be a smaller part of the whole, which means it's going to be a smaller number. It's a smaller fraction amount of the whole. So looking at our fraction wall to help us, what is the smallest part of our whole out of these numbers? Well, I can see here, looking at this, that 1/10 is our smallest number, our smallest fraction of the whole. What is our next smallest? Our next smallest is 1/8, because you can see 1/8 is bigger than 1/10, but is smaller than, for example, a quarter. Then we are going to look at our next one. Looking up here, oh, I know that 4 is a larger number, but it's a larger denominator. So the number that is, let me say this again. So the larger the number that is the denominator, the smaller the fraction. So 4 is a larger number than 3, which means that the whole is split into 4 equal parts, not 3. Therefore, a quarter is smaller than a third. You can always check that on your fraction wall. I suggest that you maybe have this saved on your computer, or you could even maybe try and make your own. And then a third is going to be our largest fraction. So you're now got your independent task. Remember, with the same denominator, you look at the numerator. Same denominator, look at the numerator. Different denominators, but unit fraction. Remember, the larger the denominator, the smaller the fraction. Same denominator, look at the numerator. Different denominator, the larger the denominator, the smaller fraction. Have a look through the video again if you're not sure of something, and I look forward to seeing your independent tasks uploaded onto Seesaw.